I figure there are two main ways to help keep your allies alive in just about any role-playing game. One, make it so your allies get hit less often, acting as a shield or a tank for them. Or two, healing them up when they do take damage. Well, today we are going to build a character that excels at both of those things. The ultimate protector. Welcome to D4. Hey everybody, so here at D4 every week I take a deep dive into character builds for my favorite role-playing games. I like to crunch numbers about them, I like to theory craft about them, not so that I can tell you like the right way or the best way to play a character, but to explore one potential way to build something in the hopes of creating a character that is both powerful but also fun to play. So if you also enjoy creating characters for your favorite role-playing games, or if you are into theory crafting, or if you're just looking for tips or ideas on how to build something that you're thinking about playing, then welcome home. This is where you belong, and I'm really glad you're here. So thanks for watching. My name's Colby. So I think it's long been sort of commonly accepted among D&D 5e aficionados that of all the artificer subclasses, the battlesmith reigns supreme. I personally still think it's the armorer, but I know I'm in the minority on that one. Anyways, yeah, most would argue that at the very least they are the hardest hitting artificer. They have an amazing spell list that gets them great damage options and lets them stay in the fight longer. They get martial weapon proficiency, extra attack, and can even make attacks with their intelligence modifier. They get a pet that can do a little extra damage, and at higher levels get subclass abilities that further enhance the damage they do when they or their pet land an attack. And while all of these things are true, when I saw the changes to artificers that came out with the new Eberron book, you know what my initial thought about battlesmiths was? Dang, battlesmiths are going to make amazing healers now. I mean, to be fair, this has little to do with the changes that the battlesmith itself saw. They largely remain unchanged from the version we saw in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything a few years ago, and it has more to do with how artificers themselves were changed and how some key healing spells were changed for 5.5. But when you combine it all together, yeah, I think you can make a battlesmith today that rivals even clerics, druids, and bards for pure, like, in-combat healing power, and especially with the help of a little multi-classing, I think you can make a battlesmith who also simultaneously makes a pretty solid tank. So that's what I want to build today. An artificer who is sort of like the ultimate protector. Someone who can reduce the damage allies take in the first place through a series of debuffs they throw on enemies, trying to hurt their friends, just making it harder for enemies to hit their friends in the first place, being really hard to hit and tanky themselves, but then, yeah, while also bringing some fantastic healing capacity to ensure that if their allies ever do take damage, despite their best efforts, that they'll be able to patch those allies back up to full health without breaking a sweat. Making us the ultimate ally to help any team breeze through even the toughest of combat encounters. Can you build a battlesmith to do really solid damage? Of course. I've done several in the past and will undoubtedly do several more in the future. Here's an example of one of my favorites. But today, I want to take this slightly unorthodox path to the battlesmith. So let's jump in to episode number 247, the Defender of Steel, the Support Officer. The Battle Medic would work really great, but I've already used that name, unfortunately. The Masher Chief, the Steel Defender, get it? The Wambulance, the Hippocratal Smith, Doggy Hauser MD, Protector Gadget, Dr. Heelgood. Thanks, as always, to the wonderful suggestions from the Discord server. I think this week I'm going to have to give it to John O for coming up with the Steel Protector. Simple, but apt, with a nice nod to the subclass. Huge thanks to my good friend Randall Hampton for the fantastic artwork that he put together for the build this week. He does this every week. If you'd be interested in checking out the other stuff that he does, or maybe even trying to, commission him to create some art for your character or even your entire party, I will put links in the video description, as always, on how to do so. And don't have a sponsor for the video again this week, that's fine. I'd love it if you'd check out my merch. There's links in the video description that can take you to great t-shirts and candles and soap and things that are all kind of themed around D&D and especially the D4 channel. So if you see something that you like, I'd appreciate it if you'd pick it up. Get yourself something cool, and it helps me out a little bit as well. Thanks. All right, jumping in. At level 1 for our starting class, we're going to go Artificer, even though I do want to take at least one level in Fighter on this build at some point, and more on that later, as well as some other multiclassing. I think it's more important to get to our best Artificer and Battlesmith features as soon as possible, and since Artificers get Constitution saving throw proficiency, yeah, I think we just start here and beeline for a bit. As for our species, I'm seriously just considering saying, like, from now on, here are some species that I would recommend for this build, instead of saying this is the species that we're taking, because most of the time, just about anything's going to work fine. For this build in particular, that is the case, since we're not really building to try and optimize damage, right? But more to optimize survivability and support. For that reason, I can see going Human to take an extra Origin feat, Aasimar, mostly for the little extra heal they get. Dwarf brings some additional survivability. Warforged gives you a nice bump to your AC, but I think my favorite option out of all of them would probably be the Shifter from the new Eberron book. With a bonus action, they can transform into one of several cool forms and gain some temporary hit points. You have to choose which form you always change into when you choose the species, but if we went with the Beasthide option, we'd get a +1 to our armor class and some additional extra temporary hit points when we transform, so it's pretty awesome. It kind of stinks that it takes our bonus action to transform and only lasts for a minute, but I think on this build in particular, we'd be able to spare that bonus action for the buff most of the time. Again, though, if you'd prefer to go a different route, you should. For our background, as always I say, take an old one or a custom one if you can and make it your own. But if you couldn't, I'd probably go with Inquisitive, since it gives the ability score increases we want and one of the Origin feats I'd like to have. And yeah, as always, there are a ton I would love to have and would suggest considering for an Origin feat, Tough for some extra hit points. That would probably be my first pick if I could get it. Musician to give your allies heroic inspiration when you rest. That's a fantastic support feature. Purple Dragon Rook isn't half bad for support, as it also lets you give heroic inspiration, but just once per day, but when you roll initiative. Zentarum Ruffian isn't bad either, as it lets you and your allies have advantage on their initiative rolls if you burn your own heroic inspiration to do so. If you go that route, I'd probably make sure to play as a human or make sure someone in your party has the musician feat, right? That way you'll have heroic inspiration pretty regularly. But yeah, if you can't get any of those, Alert is what we get from the Inquisitive background, and that's awesome. On any character, really. It helps ensure that you get a good initiative roll and even lets you swap initiative with someone else in your party if that works out strategically for whatever reason. As for our starting ability scores, I assume we go the point buy method as always and say let's grab a 15 intelligence, take a +2 there, a 13 constitution and a +1, and then a 14 dexterity and a 13 wisdom. We'll need that wisdom for some multi-classing later, but it won't come along for a while. So if you're not wanting to do that multi-classing, or maybe if your campaign is going to end before like level 12 or 13 or so, I might prefer to start with a 16 constitution instead and worry a little less about wisdom maybe. As for starting equipment, I'm gonna say let's grab some scale mail armor, a shield, and then just like your favorite D6 simple melee weapon. For now, we'll be swapping to a D8 later, but yeah, we're starting off with the simple weapons. As an Artificer 1, though, we get a Tinker's Magic first up, which says that we know the Mending cantrip and can create basically a piece of adventuring gear with a magic action, intelligence modifier times per day, situationally useful for sure. And then we get Artificer spells. I'd say let's start off with True Strike so that we can make a weapon attack with our intelligence modifier right from the start here at level 1, right? Though I would want to swap that out for Booming Blade later, once we get our subclass, if we've got access to it. I'd probably want Thorn Whip as well, since it can attack enemies from range and like yoink them towards us to help keep allies safe, right? Hopefully encourage enemies to attack us instead. We'd want to grab Cure Wounds for sure, which will be our primary healing spell on this build. It heals a fantastic 2d8 plus our intelligence modifier now and scales up by 2d8 more for every level we upcast. It's so good. And then I'd maybe grab Fairy Fire for concentration for now to potentially give allies advantage on their attacks, and like probably Jump and or Long Strider for general movement buff. You know who really buffs my movement? What's that supposed to mean? My channel members and patrons. Quick shout out to you guys. Thank you so much for your support. You make this channel possible, and I'm so grateful for you. If you're not a patron or a member, I'd love it if you'd consider becoming one. There's a button just below that says join, or if you look in the video description, you'll see a link to my Patreon. And there you can learn about all of the perks that I give to my members and patrons, and just know that I give all of those perks to anyone who signs up at just like the silver level or higher. It's a couple bucks a month. I just ask, pay what you feel you can afford and what you think it's worth. Those perks include access to the library of write-ups that I create for all of these builds to help you recreate them yourself a little more quickly and easily, access to the community Discord server, and access to the live monthly Q&A hangout sessions that we have. If you are not interested in supporting the channel in this way for whatever reason, don't feel like you can afford it, whatever, that's fine. I'm glad that you're here watching, liking, subscribing, all of those things. They're fantastic ways to support too, so thanks. All right, at level 2, we get replicate magic item. It says that we can learn 4 magic item like recipes basically from a select list and have any 2 of them active at a time. I think for now, if it were me, I'd go with the +1 shield and a +1 weapon, though it would be worth considering crafting some gleaming half plate here. Remember, we can just straight up create any common magic item that isn't a scroll, a potion, or cursed. That's on the list here. I've seen people get confused about this. We don't need the half plate first to turn it into gleaming half plate or anything. We just need to have Tinker's tools. Sure, you might want to flavor this as taking some armor and making it magical or whatever, but raw, rules as written, you can basically just create it out of thin air. And yeah, half plate is expensive and you're level 2. So it'll probably do more for our armor class at this point than like adding a +1 to a shield, right? Later on, when you can buy some half plate, go for it and free up the magic item slot. Grab that +1 shield. At level 3, we get our subclass. And yes, we're going Battlesmith, as we've said. Should we read the flavor text from the new book here? Am I going to regret this? A Battlesmith is a combination of protector and medic, an expert at defending others and repairing both materiel and personnel. To aid in their work, Battlesmiths are accompanied by a steel defender, a protective companion of their own creation. Yeah. They just took the old flavor text and cut stuff out of it, as usual, it seems. Still, I appreciate that the emphasis in the flavor text here is, it's actually like what I'm kind of building them for, right? Makes me feel like I'd be going more against the grain if I just built them for all-out damage. And I wonder if, are most people playing Battlesmiths as, protectors and healers? I don't think so. And I also don't think that that's why most people think that Battlesmiths are, the best subclass. But maybe this is just, Wizards of the Coast trying to zero in on what they intended the subclass to be in the first place. Anyways, as a Battlesmith, we get a few nice features. Tools of the Trade gives us proficiency with the Smith's tools and halves the time to craft weapons, which will be great if that's something that you're into, you have the time and the resources for. Maybe let you save yourself a magic item slot. But we also get Artificer spells, and I think Battlesmiths get a better spell list than any other Artificer subclass. There are plenty of good ones for some of the other subclasses anyways, maybe everyone but Alchemists. But yeah, at this level, we get Heroism, a nice way to give lots of temporary hit points, as well as immunity from fear. Might be worth our concentration. We'll talk about it in a minute. But then the Almighty Shield spell for supreme survivability, if we can spare our reaction and a spell slot to raise our armor class by 5 for the rest of the round when we get hit. It's so good. But the most important feature for us at this level is Battle Ready. This gives us proficiency with martial weapons, nice time to upgrade your weapon to something that hits a little harder. It allows that weapon to count as a spellcasting focus for our Artificer spells, and then yes, says that when we attack with a magic weapon specifically, no problem for us, we can use our intelligence modifier instead of strength or dexterity. That is awesome. Not only would I swap out my weapon to a D8 weapon here, but then I'd also swap out True Strike for Booming Blade, like I've said, since Booming Blade does a little more damage once we hit level 5, but more importantly for us, deals more damage if an enemy moves after we hit them with it, which would encourage them to stay close to us and not go chasing down our squishier allies. I don't know that I'd use it all that often once we get extra attack, right? But maybe. But also, there's more at this level. We get our Steel Defender too, and maybe this is the most important Battlesmith feature, yeah? Depends on how you're building, but yeah, we get a little pet. It's medium-sized, and we determine its appearance, and then it acts like most pets in the game these days. It shares our initiative, but kind of goes after us. It only takes the dodge action unless we use our bonus action to have it use their action for something. If it dies, we can bring it back with an action and our touch, though it takes a minute for it to come back, but that's nice. I mean, no spell slot required. We would need to heal it, and surprisingly, they removed the verbiage stating that the mending spell heals the Steel Defender now in this updated version. I can see some DMs allowing it, but nothing in the mending spell itself says that it would heal constructs, or by how much for that matter. So thankfully, the Steel Defender can use their own action to repair themselves for 2d8 plus our intelligence modifier, but they can only do that 3 times per day. In the end, we can make a new one after a long rest though, so at least they'll always start the day at full health. The Defender can make a nice little attack for a d8 plus 2 plus our intelligence modifier and force damage. Is not bad for a bonus action, but the best part for our purposes is their deflect attack reaction, which they're free to use anytime it gets triggered. We don't need to use our bonus action or anything for them to use their reaction, right? This just lets them impose disadvantage on an attack made by an enemy within 5 feet if the attack is against anyone other than the Defender itself. Nice little mini soft taunt kind of thing, which our allies will appreciate, no doubt. At level 4, we get our first general feat, and we need to bump that intelligence to 18 with a half feat, so we probably want to go Warcaster to give us advantage on our concentration checks, and also so that we can cast a spell as an opportunity attack. This would let us, for example, smack someone with Booming Blade as they run away from us, which would then trigger the bonus damage from them moving, right? When we hit with Booming Blade, remember, we do a little extra damage starting next level, and then if they move, we do even more damage. This should trigger that bonus damage right away on an opportunity attack, and that's just so much fun when you can make it happen. And I mean, if your DM is like, oh, well, in that case, they decide not to move, which rules is written, I don't think it should work that way, but you know what? Let them, because that's good for us. We're trying to keep them from going after our squishier allies, right? So sure, they take a little less damage, but they stay put. That's great. At level 5, we get extra attack as a battlesmith, so we can attack twice on our turn with the attack action if we want. We don't get to use a cantrip or anything. Like, you know, we see a decent number of kind of spellsword gishy type subclasses these days, but that's fine. Extra attack is good. We also get second level artificer spells. Battlesmiths get some great ones for free. As always, Shining Smite is a great smite spell that not only does extra damage with our bonus action, but also makes the target light up and gives advantage on attacks against them like Fairy Fire, though it does require a concentration. But then Warding Bond is even better. The best tank spell in the game, I am commonly saying, right? You put it on an ally, it lasts for an hour without costing concentration, and then it raises that ally's armor class and their saving throws by 1 and splits the damage with you anytime they take damage. I love it, and I wish so bad that I could upcast it to like affect more allies. That would be awesome, but it's fantastic as is. In addition to those free ones though, I would be grabbing Aid to heal and raise the max hit points of party members, Lesser Restoration to cure bad juju, Vortex Warp is a fun way to move people around, and Web is a fantastic use of our concentration to throw down some nice control on the battlefield. But then there's the Homunculus Servant. Remember, it's a spell now, not an infusion, and it gives us another little clockwork friend. We don't even need to use our bonus action to command it. It also goes on our turn, but after us, and could potentially do a little damage or use its reaction to cast a spell with a range of touch that we cast, but from its position instead, right? And that's maybe what I would be mostly using the Homunculus for on this build, I think, at least through, these first several levels. Just fly up to an ally that's far away from us so that we can cast Cure Wounds on them from afar, right? It's a really nice upgrade to the spell, so long as your Homunculus can stay alive. And I mean, hey, it's no tank, but it's not necessarily going to get like insta-gibbed either. It's got a 13 AC, 15 hit points at this when we cast it at the second level anyways, evasion, decent saving throws, and above all, a 30-foot fly speed to help them stay safe. But moving on, at level 6, I think that I would take that itty-bitty fighter dip here. I don't see this as necessary by any means. I just think that for this build, for the concept I'm going for, trying to be both a healer and a really good protector and defender, it would be worth the investment for 2 reasons. First, Weapon masteries. Fighters get 3 of them right at level 1, and there are plenty that I would like to take to potentially enhance our attacks if we wanted to be making them. We could grab Topple via the Battle Axe or Trident to knock enemies prone and thus give us and our other melee allies advantage on attacks against the enemy, right? Plus make it a little safer for another ally standing nearby to scamper away, since prone enemies would make an opportunity attack with disadvantage, right? Or we could grab Push via the Warhammer to knock enemies away, again, making it easier for allies to move to safety, to say nothing of the benefit of forced enemy movement otherwise, right? Maybe we concentrate on web now and push enemies into web on our turn to help control them. But above all, I think I would want Sap via either the Longsword, the Flail, the Morningstar, or the Warpick. Yeah, let's grab a Warpick. Never built around that weapon before. Sap simply gives disadvantage on your target's next attack, right? So that's good for you or whoever else they might decide to try and hit. It's a nice defensive protector move. And thanks to extra attack, you could even potentially smack 2 different enemies with your Sap weapon and put the debuff on both of them. It'd be nice if you could hit them twice and affect 2 attacks, right? But it doesn't really work that way. If they are sapped, their next attack has disadvantage. It's not exactly a soft taunt like the Guardian Armorer gets, right, or others, where the enemy has disadvantage on all of their attacks except against you, or like the Steel Defender kind of has. But it's still a nice debuff move that will help keep both you and your allies a little safer. Speaking of which, the other reason that I'd want that fighter dip is for a fighting style. I would for sure here want to grab either the vastly improved protection fighting style here, or maybe interception. Protection is really awesome now. You have to have a shield, but it says that when someone attacks an ally within 5 feet of you, you can use your reaction to impose disadvantage on that attack and on every other attack against your ally, so long as the 2 of you stay within 5 feet of each other until your next turn. That's really, really good. The only reason I'd maybe consider taking interception instead is that between a Sap weapon and our Steel Defender, we kind of already have a lot of like disadvantage on the attack tools at our disposal. Granted, protection is a little better than either of those, right? Because it lasts for an entire round. Maybe you want to put this debuff on as many enemies as possible, right? Or maybe you want to do something else with your action other than make Sap attacks. Or maybe you want to use a different weapon mastery. But yeah, especially if you're attacking with a Sap weapon more often than not, I would consider interception instead. This has us using our reaction again, but this time to reduce the damage from an attack that lands against an ally within 5 feet of us. And we reduce that damage by a d10 plus our proficiency bonus. It'd be pretty cool to be imposing disadvantage with our weapon attack or with our Steel Defender and then being able to drastically reduce the damage if the attack gets through anyways, right? Your nearby allies will feel super safe in your steampunky arms. Yes, Artifice is steampunk. Don't at me, bro. Actually, do at me. It's good for the algorithm. And yeah, flavor's free. I know, it's just magic, but it's steampunk, and you know it in your heart of hearts. Anyways, the fact that fighters also get Second Wind here to heal themselves with a bonus action for a d10 plus their fighter level a couple times per day and more with a short rest is a nice little bump to our survivability too. So yeah, Fighter 1, not necessary, but a lot of benefits if we're trying to build a character who's meant to both heal and protect allies especially, right? But at level 6, it is time for our first not damage report, but support report. I don't usually crunch numbers for my support builds, but let's talk about all the things you're potentially doing here to keep your allies safe. And sure, maybe I'll throw in some healing numbers if we were to just go all out for healing over a 4-round combat encounter, just for fun. Right now we have 4 ways to make it harder for our enemies to hurt our friends. Our Steel Defender could be standing next to one ally, imposing disadvantage on an attack against them. We could be standing next to another ally, imposing either disadvantage on attacks against them or reducing the damage that they take thanks to our fighting style, right? And then we've got our Sap weapon attacks to add more disadvantage on attacks from enemies. And then finally, we've got that Warding Bond spell to make an ally harder to hit, better to save, and take less damage when they do take damage. Other than that, right now, the only healing we could really be doing would be to cast Cure Wounds with our action at the second and then first level, right? Whether we deliver the heal with our own touch or via our homunculus if the ally is far away. Actually, you know what? We could be concentrating on heroism here, which makes your ally immune to being frightened and gives them what would be 4 temporary hit points at the beginning of each of their turns. Best of all, if we upcast it, we can affect more allies. So, you know what? Sure. Let's say we're using 1 second level spell for Warding Bond to reduce damage taken for an ally. I'll assume we've got it active when combat starts since it lasts for an hour. Then let's say that on round 1, we use our other second level spell slot for Heroism to give a total of 8 temporary hit points per round, divided up to 2 allies, right? And then, I'll just assume that our ally actually needs those temporary hit points every round, though that might not be the case. Just exploring what's possible here. We'll use our bonus action that round to activate Shifter to give ourselves some temporary hit points and an armor class bump. And then on rounds 2 through 4, we're just using our action to cast Cure Wounds for someone who needs it. I guess we're just using our bonus action to have our Steel Defender make an attack on those rounds, right? And make no mistake, if we didn't really need to be healing on our turn, and we might not, with the temporary hit points flying around and us imposing disadvantage on things and absorbing damage via Warding Bond, right? We could do a decent bit of damage between our own attacks, our Steel Defender, and even our little homunculus every round. The homunculus can attack from 30 feet away, so it still should be able to stay pretty safe. Altogether, we're not going to be topping any damage charts, but it's solid damage considering all the support and protection that we're bringing at the same time. To say nothing of our own survivability here. With half plate and a +1 shield plus Shifter, we'd be sitting pretty at a 21 armor class with about 67 hit points, assuming tough and our temporary hit points, right? Not too shabby for level 6, especially considering that the enemy might have disadvantage on their first attack against us, and we might be able to use the shield spell if we weren't needing our reaction to defend an ally anyways. It's a nice slew of defensive, protective, and supportive features, and I love it. But if we went all out for healing, we'd be putting out 71 points of healing and temporary hit points, plus a lot of potentially missed attacks and damage reduction. It feels like you'd be keeping your allies incredibly safe here. And there is so much more goodness to come, so let's keep going, shall we? At level 7, I think we go back to Artificer. Sure, you could improve your tankiness with even more fighter levels, but there's too much great support stuff in Artificer to get to. So we would be an Artificer 6, and that gives us magic item Tinkerer. This is a nice bit of versatility. It lets us recharge magic items that use charges, right, by spending spell slots, or lets us create a spell slot by consuming a magic item that we've created, or lets us swap one magic item we can create with another one. All useful stuff, especially since we get one more magic item at this level and get access to the better level 6 magic items. I would probably swap out our +1 shield here for a repulsion shield, which would still be a +1, but would also potentially push an enemy away if they hit us with a melee attack. That's nice. And then for the new item that we could get here, I would either grab armor +1 if you hadn't already found or crafted something better maybe, but especially if you had, grab the Mind Sharpener so that you can just automatically succeed on a failed concentration check a few times a day. At level 8, we would be an Artificer 7, and that lets us get Flash of Genius. This is another fantastic protection and defensive focused feature. It says that when we or an ally within 30 feet fail an ability check or a saving throw, we can use our reaction. Yeah, we kind of are getting some reaction logjam here, unfortunately. But then we could add our intelligence modifier to the roll, potentially causing it to succeed. It's kind of like the shield spell, but for saving throws, and it works for allies too. And we can do this intelligence modifier times per day. Sweet. Level 9, we would be an Artificer 8, and that means we get another feat. I think we got to cap our intelligence modifier, just take it to 20 here. There are plenty of half feats that I'd love to grab instead, and I'd like to bump our constitution too, but this improves our damage, our healing, gives us more Flash of Genius uses, improves our homunculus and Steel Defender. It's just really important. But this brings us to our next support report. Since last check, we've likely improved our own defensive prowess via magic items, added Flash of Genius to our protective arsenal, capped our intelligence for better, everything, and also gained another second level spell slot. Dang, half-casters scale their spell slots so slowly. I almost regret that fighter dip. Almost. And yes, I know some of you are going to be saying in the comments that we should have instead taken a ranger or a pally dip to keep our spell slot scaling going, but remember, rangers and paladins don't get weapon masteries and a fighting style at level 1. It's only weapon masteries, right? And that fighting style is really important to our protective arsenal. Sure, go that route if you really want, maybe especially if you're okay investing 2 levels, right? Ranger would be the less mad choice for us and could get you access to spells that we don't have, like Healing Word, Goodberry. I'd personally rather dip Fighter and then multiclass into something else later, but now I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyways, with that second level spell slot, we could either use it to cast Aid on 3 of our allies for 15 more total hit points, or just upcast Cure Wounds for what would be 4d8 plus 5 points of healing, or 23 on average. Yeah, Aid is still good, but I feel like the Cure Wounds buff kind of indirectly nerfed Aid, honestly. Nice that you can cast it before combat, though, so sure. Spread that love around a little bit. At this point, we would potentially be healing for 102 on average over a 4-round combat encounter. Feels good to break the century healing barrier, but with even better survivability and support potential now. But the really good stuff is just on the horizon, though, so let's keep going, because at level 10, we would be an Artificer 9, and that means we get, first up, Arcane Jolt as a Battlesmith. I love this feature. It says that when we or our Steel Defender hit a target, we can either do an extra 2d6 of damage to them or heal an ally within 30 feet of the target by 2d6. That's so cool. And I'm for sure assuming that we're going to be healing with it, even though it's not a ton of healing. It's just a nice little bump. More importantly, though, we get 3rd level spells here, and Battlesmiths get, wait for it, Aura of Vitality and Conjure Barrage for free. An amazing healing spell and an amazing area of effect damage spell. We are so spoiled. Conjure Barrage is nice to have if we need to throw out 5d8 force damage to every enemy in a 60-foot cone, huge area, and we get to choose who gets hit here, so there's no risk of friendly fire, right? It's not quite as much damage as Fireball, but it's close, and it's a better damage type. It's force instead of fire, and our allies stay safe. It's really nice. But the one I'm most excited about for this build, of course, is, yes, Aura of Vitality, which requires concentration, but lets us just throw out 2d6 healing every single turn for a minute to any one creature who's within 30 feet of us at the start of our turn. There's no bonus action required for this anymore, and that's great both for persistent healing during combat and to heal allies up to full health between encounters in just a minute, especially. So good. Other than that, I would consider Catnap if you still need a short rest, but just like in 10 minutes, right? Dispel Magic is always nice. Haste is a solid buff to probably put on your strongest attacker. And it gives them a +2 to their armor class as well, among other things, so it comes with some defensive benefits too. Fly, of course, Revivify in case an ally perishes somehow, despite everything you're doing to keep them alive. Hard to imagine with this build, honestly, but it could happen. Anyways, moving on. At level 11, we would be an Artificer 10. That means we get Magic Item Adept, which lets us attune to a 4th magic item. And yeah, really hard to overestimate just how valuable that is, depending on your campaign at least. And that's perfect timing because we also get level 10 magic item plans and a 4th item that we can have active now. At this level, I'm probably swapping out that Repulsion Shield for a +2 shield. I wish they'd let me just upgrade the Repulsion Shield to be a +2, but oh well. I'd also swap my +1 weapon for a +2 weapon as soon as possible, again, if I didn't already have something better. And as for the new magic item, since we can now make any uncommon wondrous magic item that isn't cursed, I'd maybe grab a Cloak of Protection for another +1 to my armor and saving throws. Or, I mean, sure, you give that to an ally, right? If we're really in the business of protecting others. And I mean, yeah, there are so many great things to consider here for like uncommon wondrous magic items. Winged Boots or a Broom of Flying. Maybe give a periaptive wound closure to an ally to keep them from dying. Pick your favorite if you don't like my suggestions. At level 12, though, we would be an Artificer 11, and this means we get Spell Storing Item. Yeah, the new best Artificer feature, because it lets us take a crystal or something, right, and then store what would be 10 charges now of any first, second, or third level spells that require an action to cast. And yeah, we could totally give this to, say, our homunculus and have them cast spells from it, and even concentrate on the spell themselves if it's a concentration spell. The question is, what spell to put in there? I mean, sure. Conjure Barrage for damage if we felt confident that our homunculus could stay safe, especially maybe, and like our allies were generally staying healthy and protected otherwise. Might be hard to ensure that homunculus stays alive if they're doing 5d8 damage to multiple enemies every round, but on the other hand, would they be more likely to survive if they were instead using a spell storing item to heal our allies? I feel like it's more likely. I could be wrong. If we put Cure Wounds in there, that would require the homunculus to use their action but also touch our ally, right? And maybe less likely. But what if we put Aura of Vitality in there? Seems to me like the obvious choice, no? Because not only is it just a ton of healing over the 1 minute duration, 70 hit points on average that, yeah, could be used between combat encounters to really just make sure that your entire party is at full health after every single encounter. Ain't nobody gonna need their hit dice with us in the party now. Hooray! Spellfire Adept for everyone! Oh, we just need to make sure everyone can do radiant damage. But yeah, also, the healing from Aura of Vitality can be done from 30 feet away. And since our homunculus can fly and potentially dash on their turn, right? It's hard to imagine that all but the most determined of foes with a solid ranged or maybe, massive AoE attack is going to be able to bring that homunculus down. And hey, if we've got enemies chasing a flying homunculus all over the battlefield and wasting their turn and resources to prevent just 2d6 of healing, come on, that is so great for us. Better maybe than the healing that we were doing, yeah? So I say we go that route. But at level 13, I want to get to level 14 magic items. And sure, there are some other good things in Artificer, but honestly, at this point, the best thing that we could do for our total healing anyways would be to just scale our spell slots faster for bigger Cure Wounds. You might decide that's not necessary, or that you really would rather have more of those Artificer and Battlesmith features. Or sure, maybe that you'd rather be a better tank, and so you take more fighter levels, perhaps getting to Battlemaster and goading attack, among other things. Ooh, a Battlesmith Battlemaster. I kind of like that idea. But for me, yeah, there's a lot we could do to maximize our healing now if we just took a few levels in Cleric. So I think our character has perhaps had a spiritual experience with Gond, or one of their followers, encouraging them to pursue the path of the divine here. And so, at Cleric 1, we get to pick our divine order, first of all, and unless we found or crafted some really awesome, heavy adamantine armor or something else that lets us ignore the strength requirement, right? We'd want to go Thaumaturge here to learn an extra cleric cantrip and add our wisdom modifier to our religion or arcana checks. And then we would get first level cleric spells and cantrips. We should for sure pick up guidance to give an extra d4 to ability checks, healing word so that we could heal with a bonus action from range if need be, and I'd probably consider Bane and or Bless if we didn't have an ally concentrating on one of those. Might actually be better than anything else we could do with our concentration, honestly, though, even though it's a first level spell. And if you do decide to go this route and no one else is using Bless, especially, I think I would seriously consider taking a cleric dip a lot earlier, or I suppose picking up a magic initiate cleric as our origin feat. Yeah. Don't forget that thanks to multiclassing with Artificer and Cleric, we do have a 4th level spell slot here with which to upcast spells should we choose, and we definitely choose. So let's get into our next support report. Since last check, a lot has changed for us. I'm going to assume that we're still concentrating on heroism right now, if you can believe it, but at the 4th level. Doing so would give 4 of us, likely our entire party, or nearly so, 5 temporary hit points at the beginning of our turn and immunity to the frightened condition. It's not a no-brainer, but 20 hit points of healing every round and frightened immunity, it's not terrible either. That's 80 hit points over a 4-round combat encounter, depending on whether or not everyone in our party actually needs those temporary hit points every round, right? I'll assume that they do, but go ahead and make a different call if you want. I'm also going to assume that we've got our homunculus swooping to within 30 feet and throwing out 2d6 of healing every round via Aura of Vitality, and that we're using our 3 third-level spell slots on rounds 2 through 4 for Cure Wounds. Each of those castings would heal for 32 hit points of damage. That's nice. Let's assume that we've put Aid on 3 party members at the second level for 15 more total hit points of healing, though it's technically just max hit points if we were to use it before combat when they were at full health, right? And then I'm actually going to apply that little 2d6 bump from Arcane Jolt too. Remember, we can heal an ally within 30 feet of our target if we or our Steel Defender lands an attack. Okay, fine. That attack isn't guaranteed to land, so let's say we've got a 70% chance to hit and thus do some healing. If we add all that together then, we would be doling out a whopping total of 239 hit points on average over the course of a 4-round encounter, including temporary hit points and max hit points, and that's a lot of healing. Now sure, some of this is likely to be overkill. Not everyone is going to need those temporary hit points every round. You're not necessarily going to need to use Cure Wounds at the 3rd level every round, or there might not even be an ally within 30 feet of a target that needs healing from Arcane Jolt, etc., etc. Especially, again, if you consider all the solid debuffing to enemy attacks and damage reduction we're throwing out as well. And if that's the case, if we don't need all this healing, fantastic. Maybe all you really need is Arcane Jolt and like Aura of Vitality from your homunculus most of the time, letting you focus on hitting more enemies with your weapon, further debuffing them, or even throwing out stuff like Conjure Barrage on your turn instead. Nothing better than a healer who can do some really fantastic stuff other than heal when the situation calls for it, right? My favorite kind of healers. So let's see what else we can add to all of this as we come down the home stretch, shall we? At level 14, we would be a cleric too, and that means we get Channel Divinity. This would let us, twice per day and recovering 1 use on a short rest, use our action to either turn undead, forcing undead to make a wisdom save or flee, or use Divine Spark to do a little more damage or a little more healing to a single creature within 30 feet. I don't think we'll get a ton of use out of either of those things, honestly, but at level 15, we would be a Cleric 3, and that means we get our subclass, and we are going to go with Life Cleric, of course, because we're trying to optimize our healing here. And Life Clerics get some really stellar healing buffs. First up, Disciple of Life, which says that when a spell we cast with a spell slot, dang it, wouldn't work on the spell storing item spells then, right? But when it heals a creature, it heals for an extra 2 plus the spell's level, but just on the turn we cast it. So even if we cast Aura of Vitality, it would no longer benefit the spell after round 1, right? It's too bad, but that's fine. It's still good. Solid bump to our heals. We also get another use of our Channel Divinity here in the form of Preserve Life, which lets us use an action to heal bloodied allies only, so, if they have half health or lower, for hit points equal to 5 times our cleric level. That's decent and it scales nicely too, but we can only heal them up to no more than half of their hit point maximum. So we can really only get the best use out of this when someone, or maybe our whole party, is really battered and bruised, which again, I don't know how often that's going to be happening with this build, but hey, when it does, we can use this before topping them off with everything else if we wanted. And then we get 2nd level cleric spells. Life clerics get stuff that we already had, but for free. So Aid, Bless, Cure Wounds, and Lesser Restoration. So go ahead and swap out spells there if need be. But remember, as cleric spells, these use our Wisdom modifier, so I wouldn't do that with Cure Wounds, right? Leave that as an Artificer spell, since we want to be benefiting from our Intelligence modifier, right? Beyond that, I just make sure to grab Prayer of Healing. So now we could give a short rest in 10 minutes, but with a healing rider and only using a 2nd level spell slot. Really nice. Don't forget, we do get a 5th level spell slot now thanks to multiclassing. At level 6, we would be a Cleric 4, and that means we get another feat. And I think I would either bump Constitution, taking it to 16 here. That's good for our hit points and our saving throws. Or maybe take Resilient Wisdom. especially since our wisdom has been sitting there at 13 all this time. It would bump it to 14, good for cleric stuff and for our perception and other skills, and put our wisdom saves at a +8, next level anyways, which is a really important save, right? Especially at this stage in the game. But finally then, for us at level 17, we would be a cleric 5. That means we get Seer Undead. This adds a little damage to undead who fail their save against our turn undead channel divinity, right? But more importantly, we get 3rd level cleric spells. Life clerics get Mass Healing Word and Revivify for free. It's nice when we need them. But beyond that, I'd consider Remove Curse. One of those, like, you really wish you had this when you need it spells. And, I mean, sure, Spirit Guardian, if, like, we found out that we didn't need to use our concentration for more heals, right? It's really solid multi-target persistent damage. But if we did want to really maximize our healing, I would use our concentration now on Beacon of Hope. I really love this spell for healers. It gives advantage on wisdom and death saves for your entire party. No need for heroism then. And causes everyone affected by it to regain the maximum number of hit points possible from any healing they receive. Doesn't just have to come from you, doesn't have to be a spell. And we will get a ton of mileage out of that, potentially. Finally, don't forget, we do get a 6th level spell slot now thanks to multiclassing, and just in time for our final support report. Okay, since last check, we have added a ton of potential to our healing arsenal. Let's say on round 1 now we're casting Beacon of Hope, and then on rounds 2 through 4 we'd be upcasting Cure Wounds at first the 6th and then the 5th level. We'd still be using our bonus action to get our Steel Defender to attack and then heal an ally if they hit, right, thanks to the Jolt. And having our Homunculus concentrating on Aura of Vitality, flying over the battlefield and raining down light and health from above. Let's say we're upcasting Aid at the 4th level as well now for 45 additional max hit points total. And yeah, thanks to the Everyone Heals for max hit points benefit from Beacon of Hope, under all of those assumptions, we would be adding 420 hit points to our party's life over the course of a 4-round combat encounter. It's really hard to imagine them ever needing all of that, especially with us potentially turning their failed saves into successes, reducing the damage they take, and causing enemies to miss all of the time. But hey, if things go south, we got Revivify, and 9 more uses of Aura of Vitality just waiting to be used. So let's get into some final thoughts on this one. I don't give a tier score or anything for my support builds, but I mean, yeah, I freaking love this build. Looking back on it, part of me really wanted to leave Artificer behind a little sooner. The truth of the matter is that for just pure healing power, yeah, you're going to get a little more out of Cleric than you will really any half-caster, right? Same with Druid. Not only for the higher level spells, but especially for the faster spell slot scaling. The way that Cure Wounds goes up by 2d8 per level if you upcast it, that's just a ton. And if we could have gotten to Beacon of Hope quicker, that would have made a big difference earlier on too. But I mean, I've kind of already done the ultimate healer build, right? Right up there for 5.5. And yeah, the amount of healing that build can put out is ludicrous. But the truth is, it's probably overheal, like just about all of the time. And that maybe gets to why I in part wanted to stick with Artificer for longer here, and also build the character like more than just a healer, right? But a healer tank protector. First up, because the reality is that despite the buffs that we've seen to healing in 5.5, you're generally going to save your allies a lot more health by preventing them from getting hit than you will by healing them after the fact, right? Depending on what you're fighting and what level of spell slots you have left, I guess. And yeah, as amazing as clerics are for a lot of stuff, they don't really make great tanks. With some multiclassing, sure, like that, right? But this Artificer, with just a single fighter dip, is doing a ton to protect allies through buffs and debuffs, making themselves incredibly durable in the process. A lot more durable than a typical cleric would be, thanks largely to the magic items, sure. But there's more than that, and Flash of Genius is amazing. And then, of course, there's the spell storing item. Truth is, we weren't getting a ton of in-combat healing from putting Aura of Vitality in that thing. Once Beacon of Hope kicks in, it's a lot better, but still nothing crazy. But it's really, really hard to overestimate the power of 10 charges of Aura of Vitality that you can just use throughout the day. Short rests are great if you can get them, but sometimes you don't have an hour between combat encounters, right? But you're almost always going to have a minute or two at least. And seriously, 10 charges of Aura of Vitality is going to make it so that you pretty much never begin any combat where your entire party isn't at full health in all but the most grueling of campaigns and adventure days. And even then, I mean, 10 charges, that's like 700 hit points on average of healing that you'd be restoring per day just with your spell storing item. It's almost like, yeah, once you get that online, you might never need to worry about healing again, especially with Arcane Jolt, right? And Beacon of Hope. I mean, just those two things going with Beacon of Hope active is 24 hit points of healing every single round. Most of the time, that's probably going to be enough to keep anybody from going down. And then after the fight, bam, everyone's back to full health in a minute or two. It's so strong. So yeah, I mean, this is sort of like that artillerist build that I did a few weeks ago, right? In a lot of ways. I think we see that the true power of the Artificer isn't necessarily in their ability to just be like the best at any one thing. It's in their versatility. Incredible support potential, incredible defensive potential, nice multi-target AoE if we want it, and maybe especially with the Battlesmith, pretty solid single target damage if we want it too. I'm still on the fence. Maybe. Most people seem to think so. Artillerists get a lot of love too. I still like the Armorer best, but after building this one today, not even really trying for damage, I can absolutely see why Battlesmiths tend to be the favorite. But whether you think they are or not, that is the build for the week. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I sure did. I was planning on playing an Armorer in like an upcoming campaign that's about to start next week because I wanted to be a great tank, but I am seriously considering changing that and going Battlesmith instead. They're not quite as good a tank. Their soft taunt is not as strong, but man, their healing power is a lot better. Especially once you get third level spells, right? But anyways, I love you guys. Thank you so much for all that you do for me and for this channel. You are the best. Truly. I hope you have a fantastic day and a really great week. And if you don't, please hang in there. Talk to one another, okay? Listen to each other. Be curious. Try and find compassion, especially for yourself. I hope that I'll see you again really soon, but until then, take care. Bye. Says he wants to leave for a while. She just sits and tries to smile. That's okay. It was boring anyway. Too long, too late this time. Too far, too great in my mind. Toad the Wet Sprocket. One of my favorite bands of all time. I got the shirt from them at a concert. They signed it even, but the signatures are fading. Oh, it's so sad. Felt like Sprocket was a good thing to include in an Artificer build. But more importantly, this last week, as I'm recording this anyways, they just came out with a new album. It's called Rings. For all you Gen Xers and like older millennials and anyone really who loves like great music, this album is, I've been a fan of theirs most of my life. This might be my favorite thing that they've ever put out. It's acoustic. It's all acoustic. It's kind of a greatest hits. So they go back through pretty much every album. They've got at least one song from every album, and they give it like this acoustic treatment. And it's so good. It is clean. The tones are amazing. Harmonies, fantastic. There's some classics in there, and then there's like some gems that you would not think, if you're a fan, you wouldn't think that this song would sound good, like with an acoustic version of it. But it's like, oh, so good. That song, Jam, is not my favorite song of theirs, but it's my favorite on this album. So anyways, that's just a plug for Toad. Go check out Rings. Check them out on Spotify or buy the album or whatever, because man, it's so good. A few years ago, considering for an Origin feat. Best of all, we have some lovely steel drum music playing downstairs. I don't know if you can hear that. But if you can't, you're missing out. Yeah, the new best artificer feat. The best, well, yeah, the new best artificer. At level 50, but we can, and causes, and